and welcome to this special edition of the Culture Magazine on I-24 News. I'm Glenn Grober. Thank you so much for joining me. Today our show is devoted to Joshua Sobol. Sobol is one of Israel's prominent and most prolific playwrights. His plays have been performed both in Israel and around the world to great acclaim. Among his best-known plays are Ghetto, Village, and Soul of a Jew. His work touches upon the deepest, most complicated aspects of Israeli and Jewish life and does not shy away from difficult and often controversial subjects. This weekend, an event celebrating his work will be staged at the Mediatek Center in Holon. It will include extracts from his play, as well as songs played by his son, musician Yali Sobol. I'm very happy to have Joshua Sobol here in our studio. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let's begin with the event that's happening this Friday, celebrating 70 plays that you wrote.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Well, I'm now finishing the last scenes in the 70th play.
Not a very, I would say 70 plays. That's immense.
It's over 40 something years, 40 odd years. I started writing long ago, and sometimes I wrote one play a year, sometimes I wrote two or so. It depends on the subjects, on the intensity, on whatever. I don't know what makes me write, really.
Yeah, but how do you when coming to throw an event like this together, how do you approach this body of work to select?
Fortunately enough, it wasn't my job to select the passages. It was my son who is building up the whole program, and right. So he drew the line of the numbers, scenes, songs, etc. that will be performed.
And it's not just your son, it's going to be a family evening in general. Your wife is the stage designer?
Well, it so happens that we were all working in the theater. Yeah. So my wife Edna, she's a set designer, and we worked together a lot, and she will take care of the set, so to speak, of what will happen on the stage visually.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, when I thought of this event, I have to admit that I thought of it as bittersweet, because on the one hand, there's the feeling of summing up something with an event like this, but on the other hand, with the atmosphere that is currently in our streets, it doesn't seem like much of the issues you've dealt with have been solved. Let's put it that way.
They've not been solved, but things have changed. There has been some evolution in some aspects. For instance, I can quote the example of a play that I wrote in '85, which was called The Palestinian Girl. Mm-hmm. And when we put it on in Haifa on the stage, we had protests coming from the subscribers of the theater.
Yeah.
We had then like 30,000 subscribers. People said we will not enter the theater so long as the word Palestinian figures on the posters of the theater.
Yeah.
And I had to convince them. I said, come to see the show, and then if you want, we will give you back the money for the tickets. Now, at that time, the word Palestinian in itself was kind of a taboo already. But what happened over the years, of course, now we speak it out, we speak up, and everyone uses not only the word, but our prime minister meets the Palestinian prime minister, yeah. And so on and so forth. So things have developed in both directions, because there has been, I would say, a growth of extremism in our society, fanaticism, yeah. Zealotism, even I can term it. And I think that one of the reasons that it happens is because we are approaching a historical moment where we will have to meet reality finally and make a decision and recognize the right of the Palestinians for a state of their own, a viable state, and so on. Right. So the nervosity is growing up towards that moment, probably.
And you think that the flames are going to get higher and higher until the moment of eruption, the moment of explosion?
I don't know. I know one thing, that already the flames are quite high. And we are trying, I think many Israelis realize now that this is not a game to play, because the playground may go up in flames.
Yeah, yeah.
And the playground is our country.
Yeah,
So
our lives.
Our life, yes.
Now, in your work, you often connect the history of the Jewish people to current events.
Yes.
Is that can you see that parallel happening these days?
Yeah, it happened once. I wrote well, in '87, I wrote a play called The Jerusalem Syndrome,
Yeah.
which dealt with the destruction of the Second Temple as a result of the uprising of the Jews against the Romans at the time. And this was also a war which was absolutely unnecessary. It was a very arbitrary conflict that was created here, and it
By
was
extremists?
By extremists, yes. And our zealots led our people to a clash, to a kind of showdown with Rome, and without any chance to win that showdown. So they brought about the destruction of the temple and the loss of Jewish independence.
Yeah. Nowadays, I guess that showdown is done internally.
It is now done internally, I think, because members of our government have been inciting the public opinion and, in my mind at least, carrying out a policy which was quite irresponsible. Instead of calming down the spirits, but this is also a result of a certain process of lawmaking, which was also absolutely, which was built on prejudice against the Arab citizens in Israel, the Arab population. So I think that it is now the culmination of all these events that are now boiling down to that fire that is burning in our streets.
Yeah, you've in an interview that I read with you, you said that you were looking for the roots of the Israeli experience, of the Israeli mentality. I'm curious, what have you found? Is that this duality, this seeking danger in a way? Is that something that's in the basis of the Israeli experience?
Well, I wrote a play called The Soul of a Jew about a Jewish Viennese philosopher, Otto Weininger, who did not believe that Zionism would be able to overcome Judaism, and that finally Judaism is going to swallow up Zionism, and that in Judaism there is an inherent drive or urge to manipulate ourselves to catastrophes and to bring ourselves back to diaspora, to exile. I think that there are these two tendencies within Judaism. One which is a very constructive one, and finally, when we see what we achieved here over the last 100 years or so. Yeah. There was a lot of construction going on, but there's also a destructive urge, which has to do with exacerbated nationalism mixed with primitive religion or primitive approach to religion.
Yeah, understanding.
Yeah, so which creates a kind of very explosive stuff.
Reality, yeah,
you see.
No doubt. Now, your plays been very successful all around the world, not just in Israel, and you yourself spent some time abroad. You lived in London, in Paris, but you came back here.
Oh yes, I've never left the place. I would say that at a certain point after the scandal of the Jerusalem Syndrome, I felt that I should take my distance, and I went to London at the time. I was lucky enough that the National Theatre in London produced my play Ghetto, and so I had what to do there in London, and at the time. But it was obvious for me that I'm going to return because I cannot imagine myself leaving this country, and I think that people like me who share with me the same opinions and the same political conviction that we have to come to a solution of the conflict. Right. It's our duty to stay here and to, especially in days like nowadays, in order to bring about a kind of reconciliation between the two populations that are living on this territory.
And when you think of the perhaps when young people who are now taking their first steps in life and are considering staying or going, when you look at your children and their choices in life, what do you think?
Oh, first of all, I think that it is very good for young people to go abroad a bit and to widen their horizons, cultural and political and whatever, and learn languages and so on and so forth. And and to return to the country with another, maybe a wider vision of the situation, and not to be narrow-minded. I think narrow-mindedness is a very, very bad thing. I don't recommend it to anybody. I mean, to be
So you are
narrow-minded.
able to remain optimistic about the future?
If I was not optimistic, I think I would, I don't know what I would have done. Probably kicked myself out of the place here. Because you cannot afford to be pessimistic. By the way, it's too easy to become pessimistic here. You know, this is not a big deal. I mean, you look at the reality and you say, okay, there's nothing we can do. Yeah, there's always something we can do. And I think it's now the time to change course with the Israeli policy, to change course and to look for every possible way to come to a kind of agreed settlement, a peaceful settlement with the Palestinians, because this is the most crucial problem of, I would say, existential problem of Israel, not Iran, not what is happening in the Arab world around us. It's our conflict with the Palestinians.
Yeah. All right, let's change subject a little bit. You've, as we've said, 70 plays, books as well, articles, essays. What keeps you going? Where's that drive coming from?
It sometimes happens that one play triggers the other, so to speak.
Okay. So you've only written one. It just keeps going.
I keep going. Yes, it so happens sometimes. Sometimes it's because I'm homing on a certain theme which interests me. So I'm now finishing writing a play which is based on a historical fact of the 19th century of a group of 15 people who survived a shipwreck and lived for 14 days on a barge, a kind of a raft that was floating on the ocean. They experienced cannibalism, they experienced everything you can imagine.
Wow.
And they had to face all the problems that a human society is facing in such circumstances when its survival is threatened. So I call the play We Are the World. That's the title I gave the play. And it so happens that I think when I wrote Ghetto many years ago, 30 years ago, the research which I made for Ghetto made me very, very sensitive to such situations of a group of people, a society that is whose survival is threatened.
Right.
And what happens in such a society? Well, I'm dealing in a way with Israeli society and with our predicament nowadays.
Yeah, but I guess this is a global issue because Ghetto, you think that's why it became so successful abroad as well?
Probably. I think that Ghetto gives the opportunity to directors, theater directors, to show their art. And because it is a very open play. You can do it in many ways. And then, of course, it touches upon problems that I think we are facing more and more, like a society that has to find a new solidarity with itself in order to survive. You know, when it is being threatened by a kind of crushing power to dismantle and to fall apart.
Yeah.
And this is what happens nowadays, I think, worldwide, you know.
Yeah. But remember, you're optimistic. Just say. Now, you also, you've been pushing the boundaries of theater quite a lot with plays like Alma, like Falco, a cyber play.
Yes.
Is that a conscious decision that you're taking to try something else?
Oh, yes. I think that when it comes to Alma, I shared the work with the Austrian director, Paulus Manker, who directed other plays of mine before. He directed Soul of a Jew. He played there, and we tried to create a kind of a new relationship between the spectator and the performer. And in Alma, we offer every spectator to choose his way throughout the evening, so to speak.
Right.
Everyone can find his own way to watch the show, and well, it's a whole a whole new concept of theater.
Quite different.
Quite different. And we started it as an experiment in 1996, and it goes on every summer. And now this summer it will open again in a place near Vienna.
Ah.
Yeah, and for the 19th year already consecutively.
Joshua Sobol, I can't thank you enough for coming in, sharing your thoughts with us. It was a pleasure.
It was my pleasure to talk to you, and always at your service.
And hopefully we'll get an opportunity in another 70 plays or so, or maybe even before.
Well, I would say if we have another 5 or 10, it's
that's also good.
It's also good.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you at home for joining us as well. We will be here tomorrow with a new edition of Culture. Join us.